Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. I'm excited to get started here. Let me just turn off my captions. We'll get rocking and rolling into the formal training. It's funny. I always have to figure out how to turn my own captions off. I got other strengths in there. Okay, I'm hoping you're having a good day. It's sunny outside where I'm at in Maryland, so that always puts me in a good mood. But I'm going to dive into today talking about first impressions that we get from federal buyers or teammates, or that they get on us, or they have on us, and what we can do about it. Because I think it's really important as we move forward that we track on this when we think about how are other people seeing us. And the first impression doesn't happen in a meeting; it happens long before a meeting happens these days. In the old days, in sales, and I've been doing sales a long time. In the old days, you really didn't get your first impression of me until I showed up at the meeting, right? You might get a little bit of a first impression if I was trying to schedule a meeting on a phone or something, but then I would show up and you would, get a first impression inside that meeting. But now we can get first impressions of other people, of vendors who we're trying to engage with, et cetera, online. And you know this yourself. You do this yourself with, businesses you might work with, people you might just be networking with, et cetera. And so here, what I was suggesting is that, and I called it, federal buyers and teammates are stalking you online. And really, they're just doing research, right? There's a total normal thing for them is that they want to research who you are. In one way or another, they're trying to find you, and they begin to become aware of who you are or your company is, and they start looking in, or maybe you reach out to them and they're like, well, who is this, right? They're trying to find you and then decide if you're worth their time. And this can be teammates in the federal market, and it could be federal buyers. Either way, these people are trying to decide, do I want to invest my time and energy into a meeting with you, or my money into you as a vendor? This is a normal part of doing their due diligence as they're looking out there. And for me, I describe this as, and it's not just me, it's sales. It's described as inbound sales. When you think about this idea of them doing research on you and discovering you and maybe coming towards you, this is the whole way that you're educating or informing your potential buyers and teammates about you, about your company, and they're doing all that stuff ahead of time, and it drives them to you and it brings them to you. Obviously, if you knock on a door and you try to schedule a meeting, you send an email or whatever, and they're looking at you, that's still outbound, right? And they're looking at you. But there's this whole other side of it. The 99% of sales is inbound sales, right? And right now, it might not account for that for your company, but it should. Like, you should look at it that way. If you think about inbound and outbound sales is when a buyer or teammate is knocking on your door to engage with you. That's kind of the first time you're getting engaged. And outbound is when you're out there knocking on a door. So you put together a list of 100 or 200 people and you say, hey, I'm going to go knock on those doors. But there's millions of possible people who'd want to talk to you. How do you engage with them? Because you just don't have the time to knock on that many doors, that outbound activity. And so when you do this kind of activity with marketing material, et cetera, you're making it easier for buyers to find you. And that's what they're researching on you. And it's also how they're judging you out there. Some of us, and maybe this is you, don't have anything out there really. We're just kind of invisible. And this has been a big passion of mine since 2018. I've been trying to tell people about this visibility factor. If the federal buyer can't find you, then they don't know that you exist. In their eyes, you do not exist. I think I might say this a little later, but federal buyers do not buy from the best. They do not buy from the best. So you might be the very best at what you do in the whole wide world, but they're not going to buy from the best. They buy from the best of who shows up. And in outbound sales, it's who shows up and they knock on the door. And inbound, it's who they are able to discover. And if they can't find you, they can't discover that you are the best. On the reverse side, right, if a federal buyer does find you, but they don't like what they see, then you don't advance. And I have a ton of training on how to shape this activity out there that you can find on all the marketing assets that are in the federal space. But this is what I want to talk about today, right? Is how do you make sure that when the buyers are looking at you, you are where they're looking and you're making the best first impression you can, even though you won't be there personally in their in front of them. So put inbound rocks into the comments if you understand how important inbound sales is to your success. Also put sound check just to make sure I know that I'm not seeing anything in the chat, which is highly unusual for me, especially with this many people live. But put inbound rocks into the chat as well. If you really understand that when you start focused on inbound sales, this activity of the buyer reaching you, then you're going to have a lot more success. If somebody's out there who's got my phone number, text me and just tell me that you're that you can see me and hear me, because I can kind of see and hear, but something seems a little off. Okay, I'm going to break up today's training into 3 different sections. First thing I want to talk about is where federal buyers are trying to find you or do find you when they're looking you up. Same thing with teammates, right? The second thing I want to talk about are signals that make them say no. We call this shortlisting, right? If you think about hiring and I'm getting all these resumes and I'm trying to fill a job, as I get these resumes, there's certain things that'll make me say no, yes, no, yes, right? So if I get something in that's full of coffee stains and cookie crumbs, I'm no, right? If I get something that's doesn't have a college degree that I said I needed, no, doesn't have the experience, no. And if it has the things I'm looking for, it goes in the yes pile. Well, it's the same thing when people are looking for you or looking at you online, et cetera. And then the last thing I'm going to wrap up with is why teammates and buyers, why they even check you out before a meeting. What do they try to do? And I call this due diligence. They're doing their homework. Again, every hour they spend with you is time. It's money. And right, time is money. So anyways, that's what we're going to cover today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I am the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. Thank you. Somebody just texted me. I appreciate it. What am I? I'm the president of GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I am founder of Call Plan AI, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market myself as a small business owner, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. This is what I want for you. This is why I come back day after day. If you haven't connected with me on LinkedIn, do so. Follow me on LinkedIn. Subscribe to my newsletter, the Government Contracting Success Newsletter. Everything I put out is designed to help you in your government contracting journey. And this is for people just coming in and people who are doing $100 million. I teach the process of federal sales success. I don't have the upcoming trainings. If this is your first training with me, I usually do them on the weekends and let you know. I don't give you a lot of notice, because this is not my paying gig, right? This is something I want to keep coming back and bringing to you. I also like to sit there and come up with ideas the weekend before I'm doing the training, so that they're just more relevant to me and I see what's going on and I've got it, compared to just giving. I don't want to give stock trainings that might not be relevant for the day I'm giving it. Okay, let's dive into where federal buyers are looking when they're looking you up, right? When they're looking your company up. One of the most important places, and I say this a ton, is in SAM.gov and DSBS. This is your small business profile. And now the SBA has renamed DSBS, not DSBA, DSBS to SBS, so Small Business Search. And so anyways, doesn't matter. Go to dsbs.sba.gov and it'll redirect you right to the right tool. And inside of there this is the first main supplier portal for the federal government. You can't sell to the federal government unless you're in SAM. And DSBS is the extra fields in there that describe your company. So that's the first place. Second place are agency supplier portals. And an example is I just put something out for the Navy. Inside of the Navy, inside the Department of Navy is the Navy and the Marine Corps. And inside the Navy, one of the major buying commands is the Naval Sea Systems Command, NAVC. And inside of NAVC, you've got the Naval Warfare Centers. There's 8 or 10 of these. And inside of those, one of the 10 of them is the Naval Underwater Warfare Center Keyport. And Dave Waltz, and he may or may not be on here today. I can't see any of the chats, but he comes in all the time. He was just letting me know this past week, and he probably told me 100 times. I just finally remembered it. But he just told me this past week about how his organization, Naval Undersea, Underwater, I don't know, probably undersea, right? But Undersea Warfare Center, sorry, David, Keyport, they've got their own supplier portal. And this is a big deal. If you want to sell to the federal government, you absolutely have to be in DSPS and SAM. If you want to sell to the Navy, there's multiple places within the Navy, especially in the warfare centers. They each kind of have their own portal. And so if you want to sell in Keyport, then you need to register in there, or at least it increases your chances of being aware of opportunities coming out of there, et cetera. So that's another place they look. If you've got Naval Undersea Warfare Center, if you've got that in Keyport and you're registered, when some federal buyer inside of there asks David Waltz, hey, do you know any small businesses who might be able to support this need? One of his first places he's going to look is not DSPS, but he's going to look at his own supplier portal and go, these companies, of all the hundreds of thousands that are in SAM and DSPS, right? Out of all of those, these 1,000 or so companies have expressed interest in our division, our center. And so he will sit there and see if he can find them. And if he can, that's more than enough to be able to pass to his internal buyer. He doesn't need hundreds of vendors. And so agency supplier portals are really important. The next one is LinkedIn. We're all here on LinkedIn. This is a really important thing for you to pay attention to. You have a personal profile on LinkedIn and you have a company page or profile. You want to make sure both of those are showcasing your capabilities for yourself and your company on both those different pages, because this is where the person doing the research on you is doing a credibility check. They're looking and going, does this stuff reflect what I think of the company or what I think I'm looking for, right? So your LinkedIn profile, take a look at that. On that particular one, like I have a ton of training on the supplier portals and DSPS, et cetera. On the LinkedIn one, my sister Cecilia, I think, is in the training today. She runs a company that helps GovCons have a really strong LinkedIn profile, but she has a ton of content that just gives you tips. So go figure out what her tips are and follow them. I was hearing her tell a story yesterday about she connected with a customer of hers and she complimented. She was like, "Oh, hey, your LinkedIn profile looks really good." And the person was like, "Oh yeah, that's because I follow you on LinkedIn, and whatever you say, do this, I go and do this." And so it was really good to see. She's got a lot of good free tips, and you can engage her if you want to have her do it for you. Simple plug for my sister. The fourth one is your website, right? Companies or federal buyers and teammates, they're going to go through these different places. They're going to go to your website. They're going to look in and go, what's the website tell us? And I'll tell you in a couple of slides what should be on there in a better way. But basically, they're doing that in credibility check on your company. They're looking at this and going, does it fit what we're looking for? Does this company seem like it sells everything or focus down? Things like that. So these are the place. Oh, and the last place is, and this is huge. The last place, and by the way, people can go in any order they want. They might have their favorites. I might go to the last one here, which is search engines and AI tools. If I'm looking at a company or a person, I'll take their email, for example, and drop it into Google and say, show me what's there. And Google has its own AI tool. Plus, I can just see all the links that might go back to it. And I might do the same thing with the company website or the company name. And a lot of people are getting used to using ChatGPT and other tools like that, where they do their research on you through an AI tool. And the AI tool goes out and says, well, here's a little bit about Neil that you should be aware of. And so that is a really big step forward in how fast somebody can learn about you. In one environment, ChatGPT, for example, they get your reputation in one glance. They're making their first impression of you by looking at what's coming out. An example is when somebody does that with me, generally what comes at you left and right is, how to build a capability statement, how to get into the Navy, how to do this in the government contracting, how to do this. There's not a lot of distractions out there. It's really, really focused. No matter how many pages you go down, it's just me constantly reinforcing that if you're looking to talk to me about success in government contracting, I'm reinforcing that impression in your mind that, yeah, this is the right guy to talk to. You need to think that same way. What do you want people to be thinking about you? Like they go, oh, that is the right person to talk. I put down here that buyers are humans, and this is an important thing for us to remember, especially in the government space when we're thinking about defense or whatever. We sometimes put people on a pedestal or in a different category, but they're just your neighbor. They got kids who get sick. They have to mow the lawn. They're going out partying last night. Whatever it is, they're the same as you and me, right? And so the same way you would Google anybody for anything, and you got to think of why you go to Google and why you might like stalk a company or research or do your due diligence in there. They use Google the same way you do. And you need to keep that in mind as you move forward. Your goal is to control what they find about you. Don't let this all be accidental, right? There could be some stuff about me out there that is unrelated to my message. For example, my last company, I did all sorts, we were a SharePoint focused company. And so my last companies, all my activity and content there might bleed into a little bit of what's going on. And if they didn't pay attention that it's 5 or 10 years old, they might look at me and go, oh, he's a SharePoint guy. It's like, no, that was my last career. This is a different career kind of thing, right? And so you want to control what they find. Put that in the chat if you're chatting away with me. Control what they find. You want to control what the buyer and teammates are finding out about you. And this is an evolution, right? It's a little teeny daily habit. Actually, if I just speak really quickly about a daily habit, and I know maybe you're reading this, but I saw this, and I'll get better at what book it came from. But this woman was describing how, the idea is you don't want to sit there, and a habit isn't a whole big rock and you pick it up and you put it in a jar. No, a habit is little marbles that keep going in. And the idea is every time you comment on LinkedIn, for example, about something you do on somebody else's post, that's a marble in the jar. Every time you write your own post, a marble in the jar. Every time you show up at an industry day event, a marble in the jar. And the idea is you're just trying to put one marble at a time in the jar. And eventually that jar is going to be so full. And the idea is when it is full, and you've controlled what marbles are going into that first impression jar, then you will be seen that way. The likelihood of you being seen that way and the first impression of you being the way you want it to be will be so much higher because you're doing this as a daily habit, not a one and done project. Okay, so on this slide, I'm talking about signals that make a buyer say no. And you could also flip it to yes, right? But I really wanted to drive home some of the mistakes that we make out there. Whether it's DSBS, supplier portal, your own website, it doesn't matter. There's things out there that just are so fixable to make somebody at least not say no, right? Getting them to say yes is a little different because that's more about the intent of what they want and whether you match that intent. But simple things like, an outdated capability statement or a missing capability statement. And this is classic. Right now, over 80% of small businesses in federal government contracting, so 300,000 plus small businesses do not have a capability statement in the #1 supplier portal that federal buyers look at, DSBS, right? Inside of the Dynamic Small Business Searcher, the small business search tool, inside of that tool is a place where you could just put a hyperlink to a capability statement. It's a very simple task. That link should actually lead them to your website to get your capability statement. That way they can explore your website after they get their capability statement. You don't want to just send it to a Google Drive or something. So missing is a huge one. Outdated is another one. Don't have a 2025 or 2024 or 2019 kind of a capability statement. Refresh it for 2026, put it in there. I mean, even if all you do is change the file name, do that. Give them the impression that you care enough to make sure your capability statement is reflecting the new administration that we're in, the new reality of the federal government. Okay, second signal that is going to make a buyer say no is inconsistency across the platforms that you would be communicating about your company. And Cecilia actually has great content about that. But this idea is you can't say one thing in your headline on LinkedIn, another thing in the about, another thing in experience, and they don't align. And you can't make your LinkedIn not really match your website. Find consistency across the board. And if you've got multiple entities or companies you're involved with, you got to pick one and say, that's the one I'm messaging on. Because if you don't, then you'll put a lot of noise out that is unrelated to the people you're actually trying to reach. And it makes them say no and turn and just ignore your profiles, et cetera. So you want that consistency across the board. The next one is generic or empty keywords and narratives. Where you're, especially things like touting, we won this award, this award for, best employee love thing. Those things don't matter to a buyer. They're not buying products or services from your company because you won an award. That's just what I call a love me wall type thing. It belongs maybe on the wall behind you. But on your on the communication that you have out there on social media platforms or your marketing assets that are out there, There needs to be really specific keywords that you're putting out and messaging that you're putting out. That narrative needs to align with your target customer. Let's say your target customer is the Army. How are they speaking about the services and the products you sell? And it's so easy these days to be able to take your website as an example and put your website URL into ChatGPT and then point to the Army or upload an Army strategic document and some of those things into ChatGPT and say, hey, can you tell me if I'm actually speaking the language of my target customer? And if not, can you give me suggestions? You'd be amazed at what can be done in 5-10 minutes on the feedback. You spend 10-20 more minutes really making it your own, and then you spend however long it takes to get it onto your platform, like your website, etc. But there's a way, there's a simple way to go from being generically communicating about what you sell and how your company can help to specifically targeting the ideal customer you're looking at. So this other one is LinkedIn, personal profile without clear headline or banner. And what this means is if you go to somebody's profile on LinkedIn, across the banner, it should say something that reinforces the message about what you sell. We help small business government contractors win contracts, right? That's kind of good. The headline is right below your name. These are the things that people see on LinkedIn. You need to make sure those align to what you sell. But if you don't have anything there, though, it makes people just go away. I do that constantly where I look at somebody's thing, I'm like, I can't figure out what they're doing. And I just move away, right? I'm just trying to find fits. I'm not trying to convince myself that this one that seems like it might be a fit is a fit. And there's no point in me doing that because there's other people who make it really clear to me they are a fit for what I'm looking for. And that, in this case, headlines are a great example. Bad websites, I already kind of talked about that. You can go in and see your website. If you do a good website browse on ChatGPT, hey, look at my website, tell me whether it's crappy or good. Right? So, just tell me how I can improve it. You don't need to pay somebody like me or anybody else to tell you the initial pass. ChatGPT, just say, hey, I want you to act like the very best website, expert, developer, et cetera, with an eye towards marketing to the federal customer. Give me some honest feedback about my website, what you would suggest I change. Literally, you can do that. I watch people pay $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for website changes. Don't. Get it done yourself. Pay somebody if you have to do the actual code if you don't do that stuff. But literally, that's very, very minimal. Okay, here's the two things I want you to remember from this particular slide about signals on when they're saying no or when they're saying yes, right? Every weak signal, like the things I was saying above, that encourages them to say no because they see the risk is higher and higher, right? All it does is scream at them risk. Like, I don't know. Compared to the opposite, if every signal you're giving is a strong signal reinforcing that you're really aligned to what they're looking for, the intent of their search, then that's going to say you're reliable. You at least are reliable to meet with. You're at least reliable to say, well, come on and bid, right? Whether you get an award is a whole separate thing. But you're trying to give out signals that say you're reliable. This goes back to something I think a lot of us hear, and hopefully you've heard this. You want to maximize your strengths and minimize your weaknesses. And in marketing, it's the same thing. Minimize the risk of people saying, nah, this is not a good fit for me to even talk to this company. And give them many reasons. Maximize the reasons to meet with you. All right, let's keep going. Got one more. Oh, hey, before I move on, I just wanted to sit there and first thank Voltron, who's our sponsor for these lives. Really appreciate their support. They're helping me make this possible. Voltron is an AI proposal writing platform. So you can go in there, work with them. They will help you go from solicitation to compelling draft proposals within minutes instead of weeks. And that's super exciting as we move into 2025, 26, et cetera. And really maximizing the effectiveness of AI in our world. But that said, I'm working with Voltron to put out a free masterclass on win themes. I've been meaning to do this for years. It just had never risen to the top of my priority list, but now it has, right? This idea of how do you write a win theme, like this theme, this message that weaves all through the proposal, but also all through capture, et cetera. How do you write that and how do you get them out there? This is a masterclass, let's call it level 1 masterclass because you can go to the next level. And I might do that with some other experts. But I'm releasing that next Tuesday on Voltron's site. And in here, you can see some of the modules that I'll have: introduction to win themes, understanding your customers' needs. These are the pain points and objectives, right? And then number 3, how to write those win themes. I'm going to give you some examples and framework type stuff in there. And then we'll wrap up with AI powered win themes in action. So this idea of thinking about how can you use AI tools like Voltron has for helping you write your win themes, because the win theme gives you this consistency across. Anyways, I'm super excited about that. Go join the wait list. Maybe somebody is feeling generous. We'll put that link into the chat. Okay, let me move to this next slide here. And actually, I do have the URL lined up, so I'll leave it there for a second. I want to talk about why teammates and buyers are checking you out. They're doing due diligence. Why are they doing this before a meeting? Remember, time is money, and that's a very important thing to remember. And so one of the first things that they're doing is they're validating the credibility, your company's credibility before a first call. Excuse me. Some of us we're too new into government contracting. We don't deserve to have a meeting with a senior person inside the government. They only have so much time, and there's 300,000+ of us trying to meet with them, right? And so there needs to be this time when you're right. So when I say credibility about your company, I mean, is your company doing enough past performance already that you deserve to meet with this next person? And deserves a strong word, but hopefully you understand this. It's like, it's this hierarchy. There's a way you move forward. But let's say you're doing, $10 million in the same kind of a business. Well, then there's pretty much nobody at the agency you couldn't meet with, generals or leaders, et cetera. And so they're validating your credibility out there. They're also kind of validating the credibility of you as an individual. I don't know why I need to meet with this person. I'd rather have my direct report meet with you. Now that I understand who you are, you don't need to meet with me, meet with them, kind of thing. It could be a pay grade type thing as well, but this is all normal, right? They've got to protect their time because their job is to serve the mission. The second thing, and this is a really important thing to remember, especially I track on this a lot because I make introductions, but they want to protect their reputation. If they're going to refer you to somebody else, if they're going to bring you in as a federal buyer for a meeting, and then they might have to tell their boss, hey, I'm meeting with so-and-so, or they're bringing in a couple of colleagues, you are now going to be making their impression to their other people. Like, you're impacting that. And you need to be somebody that they feel like would, that the other people go, thanks, John, for bringing in Sally. It all worked good, compared to the opposite of that. So they're protecting their reputation by doing their research on you. The third thing on why they're doing this research is, so one is just credibility. Are you going to embarrass me? The second is to confirm that there's an alignment to their mission. If you're going into the Army and you're trying to work with them, or going into the Navy, but you've never done any work with the Navy, your company doesn't say anything about ships or subs or whatever, right? There's a concern that there's not an alignment between what your company does and what our mission is. And it's the same thing when you go to meet with a teammate. They're like, well, that opportunity, we're not in alignment. That really doesn't fit us, or we don't see you fitting there and helping us win. There's nothing wrong with that. This is what we're supposed to be doing, because we're not supposed to meet with everybody. And they, like you, need to protect their time and who they're meeting with. And then the last bullet I had at the top section here is to assess visibility, and just how visible are you out there. They're looking around, trying to see what you look like in the market at different points, through Google or AI, through LinkedIn, through SAM and DSBS, through CPARs. They have all these resources available to them that help them see and assess your visibility. So really quick, I just want to point out, and I might say this a little bit on the next slide, but inbound beats outbound effort every single time. And that's a really important thing to remember, right? Inbound, getting buyers to come to you, that beats outbound effort every single time, because you are limited on the number of doors you can knock on. And then buyers work best with those who show up. I say this a lot. I love saying this, is that they don't buy from the best. They buy from the best who show up. Now, in my last company, it happened to be the same thing. I was showing up and we were the best, right? And I want you to show up when they're looking for companies like yours. Here's what I want you to remember from today's training. First off is, again, they buy from the best of those who show up. So make sure you're showing up, not just by knocking on their door, but anytime they're looking for your company, your type of company, that they can find you. Second thing is inbound, and I say this pretty controversially here a little bit. Inbound's far more important than outbound. And somebody might say, oh, you need to go knock on doors. I didn't say you shouldn't do outbound. I'm just saying inbound's far more important. If you've got solid past performance and your reputation is strong in the industry, they'll bring you contracts. I literally had inbound contracts in excess of $5 million just from our reputation. I didn't even need to do outbound. And at some point, you'll get to that stage. And the last thing is control what the buyer and the teammates think of you when they go research you. This is within your control. Remember that jar and you're putting a marble a day in there. If you do that, then you're going to sit there and control how buyers and teammates think of you. And I want them to think of you strongly so you can get more contracts. All right, I'm out of time. So just remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training. Have a great weekend.